Hello, and welcome to the In the Word podcast. This is the podcast that will help you to understand God's Word, build a stronger relationship with God, and develop habits that will help you love God and others better. And now, here's your host, Trevor Pope.
Hey, what's going on again, guys? Once again, you have joined me for another episode of In the Word podcast. And just know I do not take it for granted that you guys have tuned in on today. If this is your first time, please don't forget to share this podcast with somebody else. If it has encouraged you when it's all said and done, please share with somebody. I truly appreciate that. I just want to say thank you guys for all of the comments that I've been receiving, all of the feedback, whether that's through YouTube, Facebook, whether that's on the reviews when it comes to iTunes, wherever you have shared your heart. I just want to say thank you. It is truly an encouragement to me. Also, you guys that have donated towards the computer and the audio recording device that I told you guys about on this past Monday, on the Eat Up Mondays that I was trying to purchase, that I've been saving up to purchase. And I had put out there for you guys that don't know, that you might just listen to the podcast or just missed the previous Eat Up Mondays. I just put out there that I've been working on trying to get this computer and also an audio recorder. I just asked if anybody wanted to donate to that. They could. It would truly be appreciated. And a couple of you guys were able to donate. I know some of you guys sent up some prayers and touched and agreed with me that this will come to pass. And I believe it will, because like I said, I've been saving and people have donated, people have sent up prayers. So I just want to say thank you guys for that. If you want to donate and you haven't had the chance to donate, you can donate through the Cash App. And my Cash App is $Trev Pope. And if you want to donate through PayPal, the PayPal link is in the YouTube description. I believe if you put in minister5 at optonline.net, I think you're able to donate that way, but I'm not sure. If you can, just go to the YouTube description, under the video, and you'll see the couple different links where you can donate. So I truly appreciate you guys for that. Once again, here we are, ready to chop up a couple of things when it comes to the scriptures. Last week, I talked about how God was going to bring us through the storm, and I talked about how there's so many people that we see that are struggling, that are hurting, that are going through in this time of need, in this 2020 season. And I mean, it's nothing new. People have been going through, but it just seems like 2020 has just been one of those years where it just seems like if there's not one thing, there's another. It just seems like this year has just been magnified above all years of your life. If you've been living, any length of time, down to the babies, it's like 2020 has just been a real, crazy year. So I just tried to encourage everyone that, keep your faith in God, that God is going to bring you through the storm, which he will, because we know the scripture says that he would never leave us nor forsake us. But after I had posted up the podcast, I really just started to think about certain situations in the scriptures when it came to God's children, where even though God was bringing them through the wilderness and through their storms, there were some things that he required of them. And unfortunately, sometimes they did not meet those requirements. So even though we know 100% that God will bring us through, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that can hinder God from bringing us through. And it's not on his end, it's on our end. And this past Monday, on the Eat Up Mondays, I talked about one of those ways that we saw the children of Israel hinder God and stop him from moving on their behalf, to the point where he says, listen, you guys aren't even going to see the land that I swore unto your fathers, which he was talking about, the land of Canaan. And one of the things I talked about that they did a lot of, when you read Exodus and Numbers, one thing we see that they did a lot of complaining. And that's what I talked about this past Monday, to really be careful not to find yourself complaining in the midst of your storm, or in the midst of your process, or in the midst of your wilderness, or in the midst of life, period. Like, we should not find ourselves complaining, especially those of us that know that God has everything under control. And one thing God said was that his servant Caleb, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, his servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him in the wilderness and how he had followed him fully, he says, him will I bring into the land whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. If you guys want to go back and read that, that's Numbers chapter 14, verses 20 through 24. That's what we read on Monday. But when you're in the midst of your wilderness, when you're in the midst of the storm, there's a particular type of spirit that you have to have. And what spirit is that? We have to move in God's spirit. We have to see things how God sees things. And that's what Caleb did. He didn't see things the way everyone else saw it. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we're going to talk about that, because a lot of times when we see times like we're in now, years like we're in now, situations like we're in now, and some of you may not right now, things may be pretty well, things may not be as bad for you as it is for somebody else, but I'm sure that there was some time in your life where things were bad, where things were hard. And if you wasn't careful, you did the same thing that the children of Israel did, and that was go by what they were seeing. But I'm reminded in that Numbers chapter 14, I believe it was verse 22, there was something so key that God said to them. And he says, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles, which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice. And that's when he went on to say, surely they shall not see the land which I swore unto their fathers. And what was so powerful about that was, think about what God said. He said, they saw my glory. They saw the miracles. They saw what I did in the midst of the wilderness. And what he's basically saying is that we get into our present situations and we know what he's done in the past. We've seen the different things that God has brought us through previously. So we know that God is a God of his word, that he stands firm on his promises. We've seen it. He's done it before. But for whatever reason, sometimes we get into a new situation, we get into a new trial, and all of a sudden it's almost like we forgot what God has done. And I'm here to encourage you guys that when you get in the midst of a storm, or when you are in the midst of a storm, you have to remember your testimony. Remember the place that God previously brought you through. Remember that trial that he previously brought you through, because you have to know that God is not going to change from that trial to this one. He is the same today, tomorrow, and forevermore. So he is not going to change. So he does not expect us to change. He does not expect our mentality to change when we get into a new wilderness or a new storm and a new trial. And this year, 2020, is no different from that. So we have to remember our testimony. Remember where God brought us from. But this whole Numbers 14, it stemmed from God sending out the scouts, sending out the spies to spy out the land of Canaan and to come back and report what it was that they had seen. And I want to take it from Numbers chapter 13, starting at the 27th verse, and it reads as follows. And they told him and said, we came unto the land whither thou sent us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. So basically they said, listen, we went and spied out the land, and just like you said, God, just like you promised, it is exactly what you said it would be. It is flowing with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. So they not only saw the land and experienced what the land was about, but they had brought back fruit from it. So they basically had the proof in their hands. And how many know we have lived long enough to have the proof that God is a keeper of his word? But look at what they say in verse 28. Nevertheless, oh, here it is. This is where they switched up. They went from proof and to seeing and believing and knowing to nevertheless. Nevertheless means however, but the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea. and by the coast of Jordan. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. So this is why God said Caleb had a different spirit than everybody else. He had another spirit. Why? Because he knew that they could go in and possess it and overcome it. Why? Because he knew the God that was with him. He remembered his testimony. He knew what God had done for them in the wilderness. But yet these same individuals that had been with him all this time, for whatever reason, they was not standing on God's promises the same way he was. They was not fully standing on God's power and the miracles and everything that he had did, his glory, all the things that they saw. For whatever reason, in spite of all the things they saw God do, now they have a change of mind and a change of heart. For whatever reason, they have allowed themselves to believe that God is no longer able. Verse 31 says, but the men that went up with him said, here it is, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And guess what? They are absolutely right. You're right. You cannot do it. And that's the word for somebody on today. You cannot do this by yourself. That's why we depend on God. 32, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And that is amazing to me, because what makes these men great in their mind? Why do they feel like these are such great men? And we do that as human beings. Even in present times, we look at people, and because they may have money, or because they may be on TV, or maybe because they are in politics, or maybe because, they have a ministry that's on television, or they have a whole bunch of members, we feel like, certain individuals are of a great stature. And it's like, listen, God does not dwell with the outside, and neither should we. This is all about what is dwelling on the inside. But once again, they are going by what they see. And we who are people of faith should not ever go by what it is that we see. Because if you understand spiritual things, it's not about what it is that we're seeing on the outside. It's all about what's on the inside and what's going on around us in the spiritual realm that we cannot see. Verse 33 goes on to say, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So listen, and they went on to say, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. So it's like, okay, I get it. You don't see yourself at this time as much of anything. You don't have the self-esteem that you should have. You are not very encouraged right now. You're a little down. That's fine. But what was crazy about this entire situation is that not only did they say how they saw themselves, but they assumed how the giants or the sons of Anak saw them. They said, and so were we in their sight. So they says, listen, in our own sight, we were grasshoppers, and so were we in theirs. And that is super critical, that we be careful of how we are seeing things when it comes to the natural, and how we are putting other people above us and causing ourselves to believe that, we are small or we're nobodies in their sight. It doesn't matter what we are in other people's sight. It matters what we are in the eyes of God. It matters about how God sees us. It matters about what God says about us, not about what somebody else says or sees or what we think they're saying or seeing. That is super dangerous. But once again, they were going by what they saw. And we know faith does not come by seeing. Faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And who is the word? Jesus is the word. The scriptures is the word. So that's why we have to constantly play the scriptures over in our minds when we are in trials and when we are in storms, when we are up against giants, when we are going into lands where giants is, but God has already told us through his word that that land is ours. That's what we have to stand on, and that's what we have to believe. But unfortunately, they brought back an evil report because of the things that they saw. Numbers 14:1 goes on to say, and all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And the whole congregation said unto them, would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in the wilderness. So they're saying, listen, is this what God wanted? Is this why God brought us out here to die? Like, think about that. You mean to tell me, guys, that we're going to get to the point we are today, presently? We see what God has done in our life. We see how far he has brought us, the things that he has brought many of us from. You mean to tell me we're going to wait until we get here to say, listen, did God bring me this far to leave me for dead? Did God bring me this far to leave me now? Of course not. But this is what they're saying. Like, is this what God intended? We know that's not what God intended. God intended for them to possess the land of Canaan. He told them what was there. They went there and saw it. They got the proof. And yet, this is their testimony. In spite of what their previous testimony was, now this is what they're saying about God. And I'm telling you, the reason why this is important and is so relevant today, because there are many people, and I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, there are many people that even though God has done miraculous things in their lives, great things, brought them from sickness, brought them out of drugs, brought them out of sexual sins, brought them back from the dead, all types of things. We see people in this present time because of the climate of life, because of the climate of this world, saying things like this, like, did God really bring me this far to leave me? And the answer is absolutely not. But verse 3, it says, and wherefore have the Lord brought us unto the land, or unto this land, to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? So basically they're saying, was it not better for us to stay in bondage? I don't know about you guys, but it was absolutely not better for me to stay where God brought me from. I am ecstatic, happy, grateful, thankful that God has brought me to the place where I am today, and I am standing strong and believing through his word and through his promises that he is going to bring me all the way to the finish line. But listen to what they're saying. Listen to their testimony. And they said one to another, let us make a captain and let us return into Egypt. I just want to say a couple things, guys, and I'm going to close. Think about what we just heard come from the children of God, children that saw God do miraculous things in their life. Look how quick they went from victory to being defeated, all because of what they saw, all because they did not stand strong in God's promises. And we know that what they saw wasn't something so traumatic that it should have affected them in that way, because if that was the case, then Caleb would have came back with the same testimony. But God once again said, but my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him and have followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. So he said that land that he went and spied out, he and his seed are going to possess it, but he followed me fully. He did not waver in the things that I had promised him. He did not waver in the things that I had already done in his life. His testimony did not waver. He believed me then and he believed me now. And the scary thing about it is look at how the evil report that they brought back, look at how it affected the others. And when we look at modern day time, and when we look at this internet, when we look at the ability for you to post something up on social media and for it to spread like wildfire, look at how many negative and evil reports have been given by people that were saved, that God had used, God had brought from a mighty long way, brought them out of Egypt, brought them through the wilderness. Look at how many people you see now saying things like God doesn't exist, Jesus isn't real, it was all made up. Now they're tapping into other, religions and beliefs and all of these things. And what is it doing? It is affecting those that are within themselves not strong in their faith. So it's like you got to be careful with the report that you come back with when you talk to your fellow brothers and sisters. You got to be careful with what it is that you say. Words are very powerful. Everybody is not in the place where you are in. Everybody can't take an evil report, what God considers evil, a negative report. It can truly affect somebody in a real terrible way. And it affected the congregation to the point where they lifted up their voice and they cried. They were weeping and talking about, listen, it would have been better if we would have stayed in Egypt. Did God bring us out here to die? It's just amazing how they went to the land of Canaan, where they went to the land of promise, spied it out, saw that it was exactly like God said it was, and yet and still came back with an evil report that affected everyone. And not only did it affect everyone, but it brought them to the place where they talked about going back into bondage, back to the place where God had delivered them from. And another reason why that is super important is because you have many people that we can look at now that were standing strong with us, walking tall with us in the Lord, with their faith in the Lord, knowing that the Lord got us, that have went back into the land of Egypt, have went back into the world and are living a life contrary to the one that God wanted for them. Why? Because they hit some type of bump in the road. They went to spy out something. They went to scout something that God told them he would do for them. They saw a little bit of obstacles there or opposition there, and forgot that they weren't going to be the ones that had to deal with that opposition, that God was going to give them the strength, that God, just like he was with them in previous situations where they had opposition and fought for them on their behalf, gave them the strength to fight themselves, the same God was going to do the same thing. Listen, for God, no one trial is bigger than the other. That's only in our minds and in our eyes. If we look at all of these trials the same through the lens of the same God that delivered us in previous times, if we look at it how he sees it, if we look at it through our faith in him, how many know just like we came through those last trials, we will come through this one also. So I wanted to encourage you guys, God absolutely is going to bring us through the storm or through our wilderness. But what we have to make sure that we are not doing is that we are not getting in the way of God doing that we are not doing things contrary to what it is that God is doing in our lives currently. Because sometimes God could be trying to move and bring us one way, and we're kicking and fighting and going another way. And God is not going to fight against you. God is not going to, try to turn you into a puppet and make you do what he wants you to do. No, he wants you to believe and stand and be sure and know that he is God and know that he's going to bring you out just like he did in many times past, in spite of how it looks. That's what God expects of us, because we don't want to be like the children of Israel. We don't want to miss the land of Canaan, or we don't want to miss heaven. We don't want to miss the new earth because we allowed our present situations, we allowed the things that are going on in this world to discourage us and to make us think that God is still not in control. I don't care how big the giants are. I don't care how crazy they look. Guys, it doesn't matter. What God promised, he's going to make good on. So know that I love you guys. Just wanted to share that with you. I am confirming what I said last week, and that is that God will bring you through the storm without a shadow of a doubt. But I just wanted to encourage you guys, don't be the one that is kicking against God bringing you into the place where he promised you he would bring you. Don't be the one kicking against God in the midst of your wilderness. Don't be the one that is looking all around at everything that's going on in this 2020 year and going on in your lives and say, listen, did God bring me to 2020 just for me to just die here and not bring me to the place where he promised? The answer is, of course not. God got you. His promises are still good. He still has everything under control. And he's going to do it just like he said he would do it. So know that I love you guys. Be encouraged, guys. Be encouraged. I see a lot of people kind of getting a little flustered because they're talking about the virus is spiking again. And be encouraged. Put your faith in God. No matter what happens, remember that God is in control and he has your best interests at heart. Love you guys. And until the next time we hop on the podcast together, Shalom.